Hey guys, it's Demo. I'm going to give you guys a very quick rundown of the control scheme in Mortal Online 2, how to set up your UI, make everything a little bit less clunky. Everybody that I know when they first get started in this game, even in Haven, is like, fuck, these controls kind of suck. It's a little bit clunky. There's games like Mordhau that do it better, and that's true. That's all true, but there is a lot of little tricks you can do to help fix that for you, make things flow a little bit better, set up your UI so that it's a little bit cleaner, and give you an edge over your opponents. And most people go 20 hours into the game without realizing that these need to be switched. So if you're watching this as you're picking up the game for the first time, good on you. You're kind of ahead of the curve here. I'm going to quickly go over my keybinds. I'm going to go over my UI, explain why it's important, why my rationale is what it is. I've played this game way too much. I've played every build in this game. I know everything basically about this game. So first things first, we'll go over just my control scheme and my control setup. Your audio and video, that's a preference thing for you. One thing that I'd recommend is max your field of view. If you have a NVIDIA control or a NVIDIA card, I like ultra performance, get as many frames as possible, but everything else is a preference. Under actions, we'll go top down things that I've changed. Walk/faint I have as a mouse button. Some people use alt. That's going to mess with your action bars. There's an entire alt action bar that some people like to use. You can't use that if you use alt for walk/faint. Toggle auto run, I use the tilde key. That's the button to the left of the 1 key. Thrust attack is E, overhead Q, self-cast C. I don't have cast last spell. Some people get in the bad habit of using that. It's very simple to use, go without it. If I want to heal, I hit my 2 key, look at my target, hit the 2 key again, heal goes off. If I want to heal myself, I hit the 2 key, I hit C to self-cast, heal goes off on myself. Very simple. It works. You don't need cast last spell. It's a trash keybind. Interact I have as F. It's a little bit easier to hit F for me, but it's a preference thing. You could use R if you've been playing the game for a long time, and R is a muscle memory thing. You might not want to change it. I think R is useful for other things, right? You could put spells on it. F is really good for when you're taming too. So if you're spinning the wheel, F is just easier to hold and do other functions, right? Toggle cursor mode, middle mouse button. This has secretly been the best for me. Toggle cursor mode, middle mouse wheel, push it down, brings the mouse up. It allows you to scroll over to other monitors. It allows you to click spells or buffs if you need to, maybe because switching weapons is a little clunky in this game. Sometimes you'll be running from somebody and you need to just like click these buttons, or you're in your UI and you forgot to bind your health pot and you need to click it. Having that button on your mouse just feels very intuitive, very clean. I use it all the time. Push to talk V for Victor. Inventory I never use this keybind. You could completely remove it if you wanted to. Skill window L, spellbook U, pet window P. Everything's pretty standard here. Inventory and character tab, so when I hit tab it opens up both of those menus. That's why I never use the I key. That's kind of ridiculous. All this stuff is unchanged. Under action bars, things that I like, the buttons that I found work really well for me. G, B, N, T, Shift T, R, Shift R, Shift G, right? And when you get those keybinds set up, they should look something like this in the bottom right. These bars are draggable, just like everything else in the UI. I really am not a fan of the standard MMO practice that WoW set up years and years ago of putting your health and stuff in the top left corner. I like, to PvP, I like my information centered focus so that my eyes can stay locked on the target. I can focus on parrying a target. I'm not shifting my view to the top left corner of the screen, so I have everything centrally located down here. This menu goes away when you go into the actual gameplay. And then I have the bottom 2 buttons here hidden just to kind of clean up my UI a little bit more. Now when you're setting up your bars, I like to have 1, Shift, Control, and then miscellaneous. And you need to imagine running while casting and fighting and doing all this stuff. So my bandage is not just on 4, it's on 4 and shift 4, so that if I'm running, I don't have to take my finger off the shift key, I can just hit shift 4. But if I'm fighting, just standing there dueling with somebody and I need to bandage, I can just hit 4 as well. Either way, it will go off unless I'm doing something really weird like hitting control 4 or alt 4 which I never do. So when you're setting up your binds, you need to think, if I'm in combat, how am I going to be doing this? And there's something called jump casting, which a lot of mages will do, right? You'll be running, and then you'll jump cast to get a couple extra feet while maintaining a little bit of momentum, because you can't move while casting in this game, at least not with ecumenical. So jump casting is a thing. So maybe you want your spells set up in a certain way. I use mental commands for my pets. Most people don't know this exists. If you're a tamer, it's super important. You hit the P button, drag this window up here because it saves it for the play session, but for the first time it always opens to center. There's a difference between these basic commands, which are all pets, right? If you just open the menu, it's set to all pets, and then if you do that, it'll put a nice little alert in your chat and tell everybody what you're trying to do. You can actually click the specific pet and get specific commands for that pet. So if I drag that down there and I tell it, it will send a mental command that will pop up, and it will allow you to hide your commands. You can do that with follow, you can do that with stay. This doesn't give you any pop-up, so it doesn't matter, but when you're setting that up, I like to take the time to set up the mental commands on my pets, so that if I'm in a dungeon and there might be somebody on the other side of the wall, I can just tell my pet to stay and nothing pops up in the chat. So that's a pretty nice little trick. It's also really good if you go out of render range for your pet, which I'm not going to do right now. Your pet will disappear, and if you are giving it mental commands, it should give you feedback if it's within range. If it's out of range, these mental commands won't pop up. The standard all commands will, though. So you get no feedback telling you your pet's out of range if you're not using the mental commands. So that's a nice little pro tip there. Go back into the settings, go to the UI or go to the chat menu. I have help chat disabled. Some people like it. I hate it, so I disabled that. Combat message pop-ups is the biggest thing that noobs don't have enabled. This is hyper important, especially when you're learning the game. This is a pop-up that will pop up in the middle of your screen when anything combat related happens to you. So you can see that. That's from combat message pop-ups. And then you can change the colors of everything. I like to have that bright yellow so it pops out. I have whispers the same color as they would be in World of Warcraft because I'm just used to that. Right? You can change all of that UI. In the center, in the UI itself, I have the player frame scaled up a bit, target frame scaled up a bit, compass scaled up a bit. That's all a preference thing. You do whatever the hell you want. Under gameplay, since I use a dagger, I have thrust as default attack. It's kind of because I'm lazy. If you can avoid using this with a dagger, do so. But the standard should be for every other weapon type. You should not have that enabled. Mouse sensitivity, I would drag it all the way down and walk it up to whatever's comfortable with you. Click and drag will always be at 1%. Attack style, I use the standard. Some people use other things. This is just what I found to work. Save it. Now when you pull out your weapons, you can start practicing with your keybinds, and when you're going through Haven or playing the game in general, you should be forcing yourself to use these keybinds so that you get used to them, right? So I've got if I hold Q and left click, my guy will overhead attack. Every time. If I hold Q and right click, he will overhead block, even if I'm looking straight down. Same thing with E for stab, right? And block. He'll block down. Even if I'm looking up, he'll block down. And this is extremely important once you get competent in the game and you're fighting 1vx, right? If you're fighting multiple opponents and they're pushing you and doing different attacks, you can't be backpedaling and looking down constantly because you take your eyes off the target. So to be able to block down, you need to force yourself to use that muscle memory. With Q and E, it's clean enough that you can still maintain your movements. You can still do everything that you need to do and hit those keybinds, and it gives you a nice little edge. And it's also a really good way to excel your swings. If you've played Mordhau and stuff like that, you know what a drag is, you know what an excel is, right? If you look down and you overhead attack, that animation is going to be faster than if you just overhead attack while looking straight at the target, because your sword is a object in 3D space. It flies through space and it connects to the target faster because you're starting your swing closer to the target, right? So those are my keybinds. This is my UI setup. It's clean. It's what works for me. Some people do other things, but when I look at new players, that don't have this set up or don't have any keybinds set up, the default, unfortunately, in this game is trash. It's really, really bad. And because there's one central server located in Europe, there is ping discrepancy that you're fighting against. Unless you live in Europe, good on you, you're going to be at a disadvantage until Star Vault figures out how to speed up the speed of light, which isn't going to happen. One thing I can recommend to minimize that disadvantage, a lot of people use some software called exit lag, which routes your network traffic through the most direct route possible, and that gives a lot of people some lower ping. And I'll put the affiliate link down in the description. You can set up, there's a free trial and all that. A lot of people in this game use exit lag. The farther away you are from Europe, the more benefit and more impact you'll see from it. You play this game long enough, you'll quickly realize that there is definite advantages and disadvantages depending on where you are geographically. But that is an entire another tangent for an entire another video. Thanks for coming in, guys. If this helped, share it with your buddies. If you have new buddies coming in and you don't want to go through the rigmarole of explaining this over and over, send them this video. This is meant to just help introduce people to the game and set up their controls to be less clunky. Thanks, guys.